Welcome again to the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain. Thank you for joining us for another of our weekly conversations in English, thanks to the support of the American Friends of the Prado Museum. Today we are in a very special room and we have some of the most recognizable paintings here in this gallery, the naked and the clothed Maja. There are few paintings, I think, in the history of art that have elicited more stories, more rumors than Goya's Naked Maja, but also praise. So today we're going to just scratch the surface of why these paintings have caused so much of a stir even since their creation, and why they also have such an important position in the history of art, and especially here at the Prado Museum. These two were actually not painted at the same time. The Naked Maja was painted first, probably between about 1795 and 1800, and the Clothed Maja a few years later. And at the time, a nude portrait was not common. This is in fact the only one that Goya painted. This was commissioned by Manuel Godoy, who was the prime minister in Spain, and it hung in a private room in his palace. The first mention in Godoy's collection referred to it as a Venus, and it was displayed in a room with other Venuses, including a sleeping Venus by Titian, which is why we have some other paintings here, some other works here in the gallery to show maybe how that first exhibit was. Also in the same room in Godoy's palace was the Rokeby Venus by Velázquez, which originally was in the Alba collection, and it found its way into Godoy's palace after the death of the 13th Duchess of Alba, and after Godoy's fall from power, and finally ended up in the National Gallery in London, where you can find it today. And Goya also may have taken inspiration from classical sculpture, specifically from one sculpture that Velázquez had commissioned a copy of in Rome for the Spanish royal collection, the Sleeping Ariadne. It has this very particular way that the reclining woman is holding her arms lifted and bent at the elbow. We have the copy that Velázquez ordered downstairs here at the museum, and this smaller 19th century version here in the gallery, so we can see it together with the paintings. And this particular placement of the arms is something that we'll see again in Goya's Majas, and then also in later paintings. Like we can also think of Mademoiselle d'Avignon by Picasso, which also has a similar gesture. So although nudity was risque for the time, we can see this was based on a longer artistic tradition of painting Venuses, which meant a beautiful, reclining, naked woman, but a woman who was a goddess, not an everyday woman. And so that's the difference with this painting. The difference is that those are nudes with a clear mythological narrative. And this painting really is void of mythological references, making it feel very much like a portrait. Which of course leaves us with the important question, the burning question: who is this woman? Well, already in the 19th century, rumors began to rise that this woman could be the Duchess of Alba. She was a close friend of Goya and a patron of his, and she had this signature long, dark, curly hair. And the urban legend about a love affair between the artist and the Duchess really started in the 19th century, and it gained momentum over time with repetition in books and in magazines and in movies, etc. It was even repeated by historians even up until the 20th century. And there are a number of reasons that this is almost impossible to be true, and there is no strong basis for it. And in 1945, the 17th Duke of Alba was actually so keen to get rid of the rumors about a love affair between his ancestor and Goya that he actually had her body exhumed and had tests be done to prove A, that she died of natural causes, and B, that because of her anatomy, the proportions of her anatomy, that she couldn't possibly be the woman represented by Goya in the painting. People even rumored that beneath the portrait in the face that there was another portrait that Goya had painted over, and that maybe that original portrait was the Duchess of Alba. But again, technical studies prove that there is no hidden portrait here. Others have pointed out that she bears a resemblance to Josefa Tudó, Pepita Tudó, who was Godoy's lover. But again, there's no real basis for this theory either. And the leading experts on Goya, like Manuela Mena, conclude that really the way that these faces are painted is very unlike how Goya painted portraits, and that there's just no reason to think that this is a real woman at all, but this is an ideal model. This is a Venus, which is how it was described in the inventory of Godoy's collection and how it was displayed in his palace alongside Venuses by Titian and by Velázquez. And to understand the stir that this painting caused, we also have to understand the moment in which it was painted. A few decades earlier, in 1762, Charles III ordered Mengs to bring together all of the immoral nude paintings, paintings by Titian, by Rubens, by Guido Reni, and by others, to bring them together and to destroy them. And thankfully, Mengs thought of a better solution, which was to put them in a painter's studio and to then move them to the Royal Academy of Fine Arts. And then Charles III's son, a few decades later, did the same thing and thought of bringing together all of the immoral paintings and having them destroyed as well. But again, thanks to intervention, that was avoided, and all of those were stored at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, where the people who really were studying, who would appreciate their artistic qualities, could see them. But the thing with censorship is that, in a way, it makes whatever is being prohibited a little bit more exciting. Janice Tomlinson even thinks that maybe Goya might have been influenced by these official censorship policies. And that would have made a product like this all the more appealing for an upper-class elite buyer, showing his influence and ability to bend the rules. This is also a time when the upper social classes adopted more liberal sexual attitudes to appear more modern and more enlightened. And all controversy aside, it's absolutely beautiful. If we get close, we can see some of the details of the highlights that Goya painted, of mixing more quantity of material with lighter, more diluted brush strokes in a way that really is a precursor for Impressionism. Absolutely amazing. Manet would certainly have this image in mind when he painted his Olympia. And we'll leave it here for today, but thank you for joining me for a few minutes to enjoy this beautiful painting of the Naked Maja by Goya, and we'll see you again next Wednesday for more conversations in English.